The morning light spilled weakly through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Candace's sleek Lagos penthouse, but the brightness outside could not touch the shadow gathering inside. Candace sat at her immaculate glass desk, scrolling through the latest business news on her tablet. Headlines screamed of her newest contract, a groundbreaking partnership with an international tech conglomerate that would push her net worth well past £1 billion. A sharp knock interrupted her thoughts. Her personal assistant, Ada, stepped in, face tight with worry. "Ma, there are visitors downstairs. Your family." Candace's heart skipped. The family she had cut out years ago, the ones who said she was a disgrace, who abandoned her when she needed them most. She rose slowly, smoothing her tailored ivory blouse and adjusting the gold chain around her neck, a gift to herself from the first big deal she'd closed. "Send them up," she said quietly. The elevator dinged. Through the glass wall of the foyer, Candace saw them. Her mother, chin tight, eyes full of hesitant hope. Her father, shoulders stooped but trying to stand tall. Their clothes were modest, but clean, betraying the awkwardness of their sudden arrival. Candace took a breath and walked toward them, heels clicking on the marble floor. "I didn't expect to see you." Her mother's lips quivered. "We heard about your new contract. We wanted to see you." "After all these years," Candace said, voice steady but sharp. "Why now?" Her father swallowed hard, gaze flicking away. "We were wrong to leave you, Candace. But we want to be part of your life again." Candace's laugh was cold. "You left when I was nothing. Now that I'm something, you want in?" Her mother stepped forward, tears brimming. "We've changed. We want to make amends." Candace's eyes narrowed. "Or you want my money?" A tense silence. Then Ada appeared, holding an envelope. "Ma, this came for you earlier. It's from your old friend, A.O." Candace took the letter with shaking hands. The envelope was thick, heavy with promise, but also with a warning. Inside was an anonymous note. "Beware those who smile while sharpening knives. Your closest allies may be your deepest threat." Candace's blood ran cold. That night, alone in her study, she replayed memories. Old friends who had vanished, betrayals masked as loyalty, whispers of deals made behind her back. The shadows of her past crept closer, threatening to undo everything she had built. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Trust no one, especially not A.O." Candace's fingers trembled as she stared at the screen. The threads around her were beginning to unravel, and the game had just turned deadly. The next morning dawned heavy and gray over Lagos, the humid air pressing down like a warning. Candace's phone buzzed again, this time a call from A.O. She stared at the screen, heart pounding, fingers hovering over the answer button. After a moment, she pressed it. "Candace." A.O.'s voice was low, urgent. "You don't know what you're walking into. They're watching you, your family, the people you trusted most. It's not just about money. It's about control." Candace's jaw clenched. "Explain. Now." A.O.'s breath hitched. "There's a plan. To take everything. Your contracts, your company, even your name. They're weaving a web, and it's closer than you think." Before Candace could ask more, the line went dead. Fear coiled in her gut, but anger flared hotter. She wasn't going to be a victim again. That afternoon, at a high-profile launch party for her latest tech innovation, Candace moved through the crowd like a queen surveying her court. The room shimmered with crystal chandeliers and designer gowns, the scent of expensive perfume hanging thick. She caught sight of her younger brother, Emeka, across the room, laughing easily with a group of investors. They hadn't spoken since he'd refused to help her years ago when she was struggling. Their eyes met briefly, and Candace saw the flicker of guilt. Or was it calculation? She wasn't sure. Later, in a quiet corner, A.O. pulled her aside. "You need to be careful. Someone close to you is leaking information." I traced it back to Emeka. Candace's blood turned to ice. Days passed in a whirlwind of meetings, late-night calls, and furtive glances over her shoulder. Her trusted circle began to feel like a minefield. One evening, Candace returned home to find her penthouse ransacked, papers scattered, her laptop missing. She sank into her leather chair, breath ragged, the weight of betrayal pressing down. Then came the message from Emeka. You never should have forgotten where you came from. This family is mine, not yours. The confrontation was inevitable. Candace stood face to face with Emeka in the sleek glass office of her company, the city lights glittering behind them like cold stars. Why, Emeka? Her voice was raw, the hurt and rage tangled tight. Why betray your own sister? He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Because you left us to rot in the dust. I'm taking back what's mine. Candace shook her head, tears threatening. You don't understand what I've been through, what it took to get here. He stepped closer, voice dropping. I understand perfectly, and I'm here to make sure you pay. The war had begun. The glass walls of Candace's office reflected the storm brewing inside and out. Outside, the rain hammered down, drumming a frantic beat against the skyline of Lagos. Inside, the weight of Emeka's words hung between them, thick and suffocating. Candace's fists clenched at her sides, her breath shallow but steady. You don't get to rewrite my story, Emeka. You weren't there when I slept on cold floors, when I begged for a chance, when I worked until my hands bled. He stepped forward, voice cold. I was there, watching. You left us to fend for ourselves. You chose your fancy city life over family. Her eyes burned with tears she refused to shed. Family? Family left me when I needed them most. The office door suddenly swung open. Ada stood there, her face pale but resolute. Candace, there's someone here to see you, someone who says they have proof of the conspiracy. Before Candace could respond, a tall, sharp-eyed woman stepped in. Dressed in a sleek black suit, she held a USB drive. My name is Ifeoma. I'm a cybersecurity analyst. I've uncovered emails and transactions that show your closest allies plotting to undermine you. Candace took the USB, her hands trembling with a mixture of fear and fury. We need to act fast, Ifeoma said. They're already moving to take over your company's shares. Candace's jaw tightened. Then we fight back. Harder than ever. That night, in the sanctuary of her penthouse, Candace pored over the evidence with Ada and Ifeoma. The web of deceit sprawled before her. Forged contracts, secret meetings, bribes, and a shadowy figure orchestrating the entire scheme. And lurking at the center, her seemingly devoted fiancé, Chaik. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. When Candace confronted Chaik in the dim light of their shared apartment, his calm facade cracked. You think I'm your enemy, he whispered. I'm the only one who's been honest with you. Honest. Candace's voice shattered. You lied to me every step of the way. You sold my trust to those who wanted me destroyed. Chaik's eyes darkened. This is bigger than us. They'll never let you rise without cutting you down. She stepped back, the man she loved now a stranger. I'm done being your pawn. The battle lines were drawn. Candace's world had fractured, but she refused to break. Surrounded by allies she could trust, a fierce team led by Ifeoma and Ada, she began plotting a counterattack. The night became her armor, and Lagos her battlefield. She would rise again. And this time, no one would see her coming. The following days blurred into a relentless storm of strategy meetings and covert operations. Candace transformed her penthouse into a war room, walls lined with screens streaming news feeds, security cams, and encrypted chats. The luxury she once enjoyed felt like a fragile mask over the tense, burning determination in her eyes. Every message, every move from her enemies was met with a calculated counterstrike. Ifeoma's expertise uncovered a trail of offshore accounts funneling money to faceless companies, accounts linked to Emeka, Chaik, and even some of Candace's supposed closest confidants. One evening, as the Lagos skyline glittered under a blood-red sunset, Candace sat with Ada and Ifeoma, the three women plotting their next move. We exposed them publicly, Candace declared, voice low but unwavering. No more shadows. If they want war, they'll get it in the light. Ada nodded, fingers flying over her keyboard. I'm prepping a press release, and Ifeoma is setting up a data leak with all the proof. Ifeoma added, "We have to move carefully. One wrong step and they'll bury us with lawsuits and slander." Candace's eyes flashed with steel. "Then we don't just fight, we obliterate." But the battle wasn't just professional, it was heartbreakingly personal. One night, late after a grueling day, Candace found herself staring at her reflection in the darkened window. The woman looking back wore the scars of every betrayal, but also the fierce fire of survival. Her phone buzzed, a message from Ifeoma. "They've kidnapped Ifani." Her breath caught. Ifani, her little brother's name, was the key link to Emeka's greed. The kid was somewhere out there, a pawn in a game far uglier than she imagined. Without hesitation, Candace grabbed her coat and raced into the rainy Lagos night, the city lights blurring into streaks as adrenaline surged through her veins. The rendezvous was set in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Candace arrived alone, her heels clicking sharply on the cracked concrete floor. The shadows shifted as a figure stepped forward. It was Emeka. "You really think you can win this?" he sneered, eyes cold as steel. Candace's voice was calm, but deadly. "I'm not playing anymore." He gestured behind him. Ifani, scared but unharmed, sat trembling. "Let him go," Candace demanded. Emeka smiled cruelly. "First, you sign over your shares. Then maybe." Candace's mind raced, but she stayed poised. "You don't want this war, Emeka. You'll lose everything." For a tense moment, Emeka wavered. Then sirens blared. Ifeoma and Ada burst in with police officers. The trap was sprung. Emeka's face twisted with fury as he was handcuffed and led away. But victory came with a price. The emotional wounds ran deep, and Candace knew this was only the beginning of a long fight. As dawn broke over Lagos, she held Ifani close and whispered, "We're going to be okay. I promise." Her empire was safe for now. But the shadows were still moving. Candace sat in her Lagos penthouse office, high above the restless hum of the city. Through the floor-to-ceiling glass, the sun was melting into gold, casting her silhouette in a molten glow. Yet the air in the room was ice. She stared at the dossier spread before her. Photographs, transaction slips, encrypted messages. Each piece whispered the same betrayal. It was them. Not a stranger, not a competitor in Milan or Dubai. Not even a greedy politician. It was blood. Her cousin, Demola, the boy who had shared stolen puff-puffs with her under their grandmother's mango tree, was siphoning millions from one of her overseas accounts. And worse, he wasn't alone. There was another name. Her heart clenched as she read it. Her hands shook so badly she almost dropped the paper. Ngozi, the woman she had once called her sister. The one who'd held her in the hospital when she was sick from exhaustion. The one who'd promised she'd never turn her back on her. Candace forced herself to breathe, but the air felt thick, like it was fighting her lungs. She closed the folder, her nails digging into the leather cover. Across from her, Daniel, her head of security, leaned forward. "Ma, do you want me to act now?" She shook her head slowly, the tension tightening every line of her face. "No, Daniel. Let the snakes slither. I want to see where they crawl to." But that night, she couldn't sleep. Memories kept slicing through her like glass. Demola teaching her how to cheat in Ludo, Ngozi crying over heartbreaks, swearing they were sisters for life. The warmth of those moments felt poison now. 2 days later, the mask came off. Candace was in the middle of a charity gala at Eco Hotel, dazzling in a midnight blue gown that shimmered like liquid night. The ballroom smelled of jasmine and wealth. Crystal chandeliers spilled light over Lagos' most powerful. She smiled, toasted, posed for photographs until she saw them. Demola and Ngozi. Together, laughing. Not even pretending to hide their closeness. When their eyes met hers, there was no guilt, only challenge. Ngozi raised her glass to Candace, lips curling into a smirk that cut deeper than any knife. Candace's fingers tightened around her champagne flute. For a split second, she imagined walking across the room and pouring it over that perfect, treacherous hair. But instead, she smiled. That slow, dangerous smile that only people who've learned to play the long game can wear. The music swelled. The crowd kept laughing. And Candace, standing in the center of it all, realized something chilling. This wasn't just betrayal. It was war. Her empire was safe, for now, but the shadows were still moving. The peace Candace had secured felt like glass, strong in the moment, but one crack, and everything would shatter. She began to notice subtle shifts in the air around her. At her fashion house headquarters in Lagos, whispers fell silent when she entered. Her top executives, once eager to share ideas, now spoke with guarded tongues. Even her most loyal assistant, Ifeoma, seemed distracted, her phone buzzing at odd hours. One evening, after an exhausting runway preview for the Paris collection, Candace returned to her penthouse. She poured herself a glass of water, turned on the lights, and froze. A manila envelope sat on her marble kitchen counter. She never left anything there. Her heart thudded as she picked it up. Inside were a series of photographs. Some showed her at business meetings. Others were taken in her home, clearly without her knowledge. But one photo made her hands tremble, a blurry shot of her hugging Ifeoma, her face smiling in trust, and in the corner of the frame, partially hidden, stood her cousin Deo, the cousin she had cut off years ago for stealing from her. The message was clear. Someone was watching her, and the people closest to her might not be who they claimed to be. The next day, Candace acted as though nothing was wrong. She smiled in the boardroom, clinked champagne glasses at lunch meetings, and praised her models. But inside, her mind was a battlefield. She began tracing movements, pulling bank logs, security footage, and old call records. The deeper she dug, the more a pattern emerged, money being quietly redirected from her charity accounts to shell companies. And those companies? Registered under names she recognized from her past enemies. Her stomach turned. This wasn't just business sabotage, it was a coordinated strike. The breaking point came at her Global Fashion Unity Gala, a glittering event attended by politicians, celebrities, and industry giants. Cameras flashed, reporters swarmed, and her new diamond-studded gown shimmered under the spotlights. As she gave her speech about women's empowerment, her eyes scanned the crowd. And there, sitting at the far table, sipping wine as if she owned the room, was her mother. The same mother who had turned her away as a pregnant teenager. Beside her sat Deo, and next to him, Ifeoma. Candace's voice faltered for just a moment, but only those watching closely would have noticed. After the applause died, she slipped away to the balcony, her chest heaving. Footsteps followed. It was her mother. "Candace, you've grown powerful. But power without family is fragile," her mother said, her tone smooth but her eyes cold. Candace felt her nails dig into her palm. "Family," she whispered. "You're here to take from me again." Her mother smiled faintly. "No. I'm here to warn you. There are people in this room who would rather see you burn than shine. And they're closer than you think." Candace's gaze shifted. Through the glass doors, she saw Deo laughing with Ifeoma, passing something small between them. Her stomach dropped. That was the moment Candace knew the war had begun. And it would not end without blood. Maybe not literal blood, but reputations, alliances, and everything in between would be destroyed before this was over. Candace returned to the main hall of the gala with the same serene smile she used to wear when negotiating million-dollar contracts. But inside, she was counting seconds, memorizing faces, and piecing together the last, ugly puzzle. She took her seat at the head table, champagne glass in hand. Across from her, Deo leaned in to whisper something to Ifeoma. Her assistant's lips curved in a secret smile. The sight was like ice water down Candace's spine. The event's MC announced the charity auction, and the lights dimmed. As spotlights swept over the stage, Candace made her move. She rose, microphone in hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice steady, "before we begin the auction, I want to share something personal." The crowd quieted. Every camera turned to her. "Tonight is a celebration of unity," she continued, "but unity cannot exist where there is betrayal." She held up a sleek black remote. A giant screen flickered to life behind her, displaying images, the very same photographs that had been left in her kitchen. Gasps erupted from the audience. The final photo lingered. Ifeoma in an intimate meeting with Deo, signing what appeared to be contracts. Ifeoma shot to her feet, face pale. Candace, this isn't. Oh, it is. Candace cut in sharply. I trusted you with my company, my home, my life. And you sold me out. The murmurs swelled. Deo stood too, puffing out his chest. You think you can humiliate us? You owe me, Candace. Everything you have. I owe you nothing, she said, her voice sharp enough to slice the air. You stole from me once. You tried to do it again. But here's the difference between then and now. She turned, nodding to the side. 2 security guards appeared, carrying sealed evidence boxes. Every transfer, every forged signature, every offshore account. I've already handed it all to the authorities. The room erupted. Cameras flashed wildly. Journalists scrambled for their phones. Her mother rose slowly, her expression unreadable. You've made powerful enemies tonight, daughter. Candace stepped closer to her, close enough for only the 2 of them to hear. Then they'd better know I don't scare easily. As Deo and Ifeoma were escorted out, Candace turned back to the stunned audience, smiled, and raised her champagne glass. Now, she said, shall we continue the auction? The applause that followed wasn't just for the charity. It was for the woman who had just declared, in front of the world, that no betrayal would break her. But deep in her gut, Candace knew this battle wasn't over. If anything, she had just fired the first shot in a war that would be fought in boardrooms, headlines, and whispered alliances across the globe. The gala ended hours later, but Candace's mind was still electric. She stood on the balcony of her penthouse, Legos glittering below like 1,000 promises and 1,000 threats. Inside, her team quietly packed away the auction's success, millions raised, headlines already buzzing. But in the solitude of the balcony, she let her mask slip for just a moment. Her fingers trembled around her wine glass, not from fear, but from the raw energy of survival. Her phone buzzed. A single message from an unknown number. You've won tonight, Candace. But the game is far from over. She stared at it for a long time, the city wind tugging at her hair. Somewhere, someone was still moving in the shadows. Someone she hadn't seen yet. But she didn't delete the message. She smiled at it. Because if there was one thing she had learned from every betrayal, from family, from lovers, from supposed friends, it was this. Candace Adeyemi didn't run from war. She made it profitable. She turned, re-entering the warm light of her home, her heels clicking against the marble like a clock counting down to whatever came next. Her empire was intact. Her enemies exposed. And yet, the board was still set. The next move would come. And when it did, she'd be ready. Candace was strong through every test, trial, betrayal, rejection that she faced in life. Can you relate to Candace's story? Please share down below in the comments. Thank you for watching.